In 1996, a groundbreaking game was released that would forever change the survival horror genre. A game that blended terrifying atmosphere, complex puzzles, and unforgettable characters, ushering in a new age of gaming. This is the story of Resident Evil. When Resident Evil was released, the survival horror genre was still in its infancy. While there were predecessors like Alone in the Dark, it was Capcom's Resident Evil that truly defined the genre. It was a mix of cinematic storytelling, resource management, and sheer dread that players hadn't quite experienced before. At the heart of this innovation was the Spencer Mansion, a decaying Gothic structure filled with mystery and nightmarish creatures. As players took control of Chris Redfield or Jill Valentine, two members of the Special Tactics and Rescue Service STARS, they would uncover a dark conspiracy set in motion by the sinister Umbrella Corporation. I think one thing can be said is just how innovative the game was. On a par with anything else that was out at the time, this was a game that pushed it to the next level. We weren't used to having no bullets. We weren't used to having no idea what the hell we were doing. We weren't used to having to resource check all the time. So it was a big turnaround for a lot of game players back then. Today, a lot of people are used to it. There's a lot of different franchises that have adopted it. But back then, we only had Resident Evil. We didn't really have many others. So we didn't know a blueprint of how to play these games. And it really threw us all as gamers. We were used to being able to just cut through everything in the building. And in this instance, we had to make conscientious choices about whether we wanted to shoot something in a hallway or keep it alive. We had to remember if that was an area that needed to be backtracked on multiple times, or if it was one that we didn't need to use again. Did we really want to use 50 bullets on 4 zombies in a room that we never visited? That was a point of we needed to make that decision. And of course, it was all made split second. We had to think on our feet. It was a really pioneering way of playing. Shinji Mikami had this to say. When we first started designing Resident Evil, we wanted to create a game that was more than just action. We wanted players to feel the fear, the tension, and the constant threat of death. We focused on making the environment as hostile and unwelcoming as possible. Every decision mattered. Do you use your last bullet or save it? Do you open that door not knowing what's behind it? The limited resources, the fixed camera angles, and the static backgrounds created a sense of helplessness, like the player was trapped in this nightmare. Every corner of the mansion could harbour danger, and every sound could signal an impending attack. It was this constant tension that kept players on edge. I'm a huge Resident Evil fan, I'm massive Resident Evil fan. There's nothing I won't pick up that hasn't got Resident Evil on. But one thing that I need to mention about the first game is the character acting. It kind of works on both levels, and I really wanted to talk about it in this little section here. So on one hand, it's bad. I mean, it's bad voice acting. This was pioneering. We hadn't really had a lot of this particular type of thing where we were setting a tone of almost like a movie in a game. It was always like a platformer, or it was very linear. This was actually trying to create a story, and it must have been very difficult for a voice actor to understand exactly how they worked in amongst that world. But one thing for certain is, in a weird sort of way, it actually did work, because it kind of worked with that campy B-movie Hammer House of Horrors kind of feeling, where the acting was always a bit off, but it worked for us because it brought back that idea of the kind of video nasty era of films where the cast were completely unknown, you didn't really know who anybody was, and yet, the film still managed to suspend your belief. You were still scared, still a bit creeped out, and that was one of the big things about voice acting within the game. What set Resident Evil apart from other games at the time was its atmosphere. The pre-rendered backgrounds were beautiful, but more importantly, they set the tone perfectly. The soundtrack, the sound design, the way the mansion was designed, to feel so isolated. It was all purposeful. It wasn't just a game, it was an experience. Official PlayStation magazine. The zombies, with their slow and deliberate movements, were a terrifying presence. Players couldn't just blast their way through the game. Each encounter was a puzzle, demanding that players conserve ammo and make strategic decisions. And then there were the other creatures, mutated monstrosities that lurked in the shadows, awaiting their chance to strike.
Alpha Team is flying around the forest zone situated in northwest Raccoon City, where we're searching for the helicopter of our compatriots Bravo Team, who disappeared during the middle of our mission.
You haven't found it?
No, I haven't found it yet. Bizarre murder cases have recently occurred in Raccoon City. There are outlandish reports of families being attacked by a group of about 10 people. Victims were apparently eaten. Bravo Team went to the hideout of the group and disappeared.
Look, Chris!
It was Bravo Team's helicopter. Nobody was in it. But strangely, most of the equipment was still there. However, we soon discovered why.
Hey! Come here! Run for that house!
There are only 3 STARS members left now. Captain Wesker, Jill, and myself. We don't know where Barry is.
Chris Redfield. Jill Valentine. Barry Burton. Rebecca Chambers. Albert Wesker. Resident Evil.
The game was also notable for its cast of characters, each with their own secrets. Barry Burton, the reliable ally who seemed always to appear when needed. Chris Redfield, the stoic soldier with a haunted past, and Albert Wesker, whose motivations were always shrouded in mystery. Part of the game in particular that absolutely threw me was Yawn the Snake. I played the game for the very first time and I had to enter the attic to get one of the crests to get out of the building. I got eaten. It's that simple. I got eaten. I didn't know what I was doing. The snake cornered me and I got eaten. And I didn't want to touch the game again. It took me about a week to pluck up the courage to go back in that room again. And of course I got past it and moved on. but that level of fear was so new to me. I'd never been scared of a game. I'd never been terrified of wanting to move forward. And it was great. We were so used to just completing a level by a level by a level. And this challenged us. This gave us something new to worry about. And it was really refreshing. It was a good way to play. This was said by one of the Capcom developers. We knew from the beginning that Resident Evil had to have a gripping story, with twists and turns. The first game's narrative wasn't just about surviving the mansion, it was about uncovering the dark secrets of the Umbrella Corporation and the experiments that led to the creation of the T-Virus. Resident Evil is, without a shadow of a doubt, possibly my biggest franchise. If I had to only collect one thing, it would be Resident Evil. I love it from the very first moment I ever bought the first game, all the way through to the later games. I had a slight lull when number 6 and that came out, but the beginning games I was on board. They were just fantastic, and putting this retrospective together, I've been able to really look into the game itself, look at the different ports that it's been placed on. I looked at the Saturn version, the PS1 version, the Rebirth version, which was on DS, which is a great version, and it's been fun to kind of resurrect those feelings. And nothing really brings you back to nostalgia as much as Resident Evil, the first 3, and this one in particular. The music is so good, the sound design is wonderful. Even the graphics are way ahead of its time. You genuinely know exactly what's going on the screen, and you are never lost. Those backdrops are gorgeous. They're so full of detail and so fleshed out that this is a living mansion. Absolutely never gives up at any point during its playthrough, and it's, in my opinion, a classic game. The success of Resident Evil would lay the groundwork for one of the most iconic video game franchises in history. Its influence is still felt today, as it continues to inspire new games, movies, and even a global fan community. What started in the eerie halls of the Spencer Mansion became a legacy, one that redefined the horror genre and left an indelible mark on gaming history. Resident Evil wasn't just a game, it was the beginning of a survival horror revolution.